What if the most powerful weapon of the 21st century wasn't built in a lab or a factory or a military base, but instead was built inside your head, where a specific story was custom-tailored to your fears, planted on your social feeds, and then reinforced until it felt like truth? This is what we know as the algorithm, and the echo chamber presents itself as a documentary exposing how the truth can be bent today in every way. Let's start off with the first case study around Cambridge Analytica. What looked like a harmless personality quiz or a fun "What Disney character are you?" game was actually a psychological weapon. So with every like, every comment, and every share, it was all fed into a system that mapped out not just who you were, but what you feared. And the result was precision-targeted messages designed to make you feel first and think later. But here's where it gets even creepier. Researchers later revealed that the Cambridge Analytica system could read you better than your own family. With 150 likes, algorithms could outpredict a family member. With 300, they could know you better than your spouse. And from there, they designed a reality for each person. If you scored high on fear, you'd see ads about crime or immigration threats. If you feared immigrants, you saw stories about crime or culture changes. If you feared poverty, you saw stories about stolen jobs. If you feared corruption, you saw stories about rigged elections. This was more than persuasion. It was manipulation delivered as marketing. The scandal broke out in 2018 when the political consulting firm Cambridge Analytica secretly funneled data from tens of millions of Facebook users up to 87 million without informed consent. And they claimed that with enough data they could predict and influence behavior. All of this came from the device you carry every single day, your phone. It only came to light because of insiders like Christopher Wiley, who exposed how the company truly operated. And here's the terrifying part. Once you realize that the information you see is designed not to inform you, but to manipulate you, how do you ever trust any information again? As one whistleblower is quoted in the film, it wasn't about changing your mind. It was about nudging you over and over again until you thought the decision was your own. Beyond the 2016 US election, Cambridge Analytica claimed involvement in Brexit and political campaigns across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Even Mark Zuckerberg was forced to testify before Congress, grilled for hours about Facebook's role in the scandal. But despite the spectacle, Cambridge Analytica executives shrugged it off, calling it nothing more than marketing. But the documentary doesn't stop there. It asks, if Cambridge Analytica was caught, how many more companies are still out there doing the same thing? Let's take a look at the Russian troll farm operations. Russia didn't want to pick a side, so instead they picked every side. We created both pro-Black Lives Matter groups and anti-BLM groups. Both went viral. Both felt authentic. Both sparked outrage. These were the words from an individual who worked within Russia's internet research agency. The goal wasn't to convince anyone, but rather confuse everyone. Their weapon was chaos. They posted pro-gun content one day and anti-gun content the next. They would praise police officers in one group while attacking them in another. And the result wasn't trying to change people's minds. It was freezing them in uncertainty, overloading them with conflicting messages until they didn't know what to believe, and eventually stopped trusting anything at all. So they flooded the system with so much noise that truth itself became irrelevant. According to US Senate investigations, Russian operatives published more than 80,000 pieces of content on Facebook, reaching over 126 million Americans, not counting the other millions more on X, Instagram, and YouTube. If Cambridge Analytica was a drip of poison, then Russia's disinformation machine was a flood. The documentary takes viewers inside St. Petersburg's internet research agency within an office building where hundreds of employees worked 12-hour shifts managing thousands of fake accounts. Each employee was assigned multiple identities: an American mom, a black activist, a conservative veteran, a liberal college student, and then each account posted memes, arguments, and news links designed to provoke others. They built full digital lives with profile pictures, comment histories, even arguments with each other to make the personas look real. During the 2016 US election, troll farms created fake Facebook pages for patriots, activists, church groups, even local communities. Some of these pages gathered hundreds of thousands of followers who believed they were grassroots movements. Operatives didn't just stay online. They sometimes organized opposing rallies in the same city, tricking real people into showing up to protest against each other. Americans weren't just being influenced by the noise, they were being divided on purpose. And here's the wild part. The real damage wasn't necessarily changing their minds, but it was destroying trust within the country. The goal wasn't to make people believe in one narrative. It was to make them believe there was no real narrative at all, to make them throw up their hands and say, everything's propaganda anyway, nothing's real. And that was exactly the reality described in the echo chamber, where the truth became so hard to find that most people just stopped looking. And because of that, whoever shouted the loudest basically defined reality. But then comes the bigger question. Was Russia really the mastermind, or just the first to be caught? Because once the operation was revealed, the same method and tactics had spread and were used by other governments, copied by private companies, and even adopted by political parties who started running their own digital troll farms. And suddenly, the enemy wasn't just outside anymore. It was inside too. First, they use data as a weapon, manipulating you with every like and share. Then they weaponize division, turning neighbors against each other. And now, they've gone after the one thing that holds reality together: trust itself. This is the Infodemic. One of the most heartbreaking moments comes when the documentary shows a mother standing outside a hospital, screaming that her son is being murdered for profit. Doctors beg her to calm down. Inside, the boy is in critical care, fighting for his life. But she is convinced the hospital is part of a conspiracy. Where did she get that idea? From her social feed, from videos shared in Facebook groups, from the voices she trusted that were amplified by the algorithm. And that's when the documentary makes its most devastating point. Truth didn't matter. Science didn't matter. Once the doubt was planted, certainty collapsed. And if you can't be sure what's actually true, how do you act? Or who do you trust? That alone is the weapon. And the echo chamber lays out with brutal clarity that misinformation about COVID spreads 6 times faster than factual updates. For example, one false claim like masks cause carbon dioxide poisoning was reposted, remixed, and re-uploaded thousands of times within hours. Then came the conspiracy bomb, Plandemic, a skillfully produced video claiming the pandemic was planned and that vaccines were deadly. Within days, it put up over 8 million views before platforms tried to delete it. But by then, it was already everywhere, circulating through Google Drive links, private groups, and mirrored websites. But what made Plandemic dangerous wasn't just its lies, it was how it reorganized people's attention. Once you watched, you weren't just believing a single claim. You were being pulled into an alternate reality where every mainstream source was tainted, and every correction was treated as proof of a cover-up. And that's the trap of the echo chamber. It doesn't just shape what you think, but it decides who you trust. And once that trust is captured, the facts no longer matter. So now, if trust itself is the battlefield, how do you win it back? COVID showed us how fast lies can spread. But what happens when the lies don't just spread faster? What happens when they start to look more real than reality itself, making you believe in something that never even happened? This is what leads us into the deepfakes and end of trust. Picture this. It's 2024, the phone rings, and on the other end, it sounds like President Joe Biden telling New Hampshire voters not to vote. But the voice was fake and cloned by AI, and by the time authorities shut it down, the damage was done. The balance of an election changed by an artificial voice launched at the right time. For most of human existence, seeing is believing. A photo or a video was proof, a voice was evidence. But in 2024, that's no longer the case. That became the year deepfakes went mainstream. And that same year, millions of AI-generated explicit images of Taylor Swift flooded social platforms. Search engines couldn't keep up. For days, people everywhere were exposed to content that looked real but wasn't, now providing ways for any celebrity, politician, or ordinary citizen to have their likeness hijacked in seconds. And it didn't stop there. Even during India's national elections, deepfakes of Bollywood stars pushing political messages had spread like wildfire, forcing the actors themselves to warn fans to beware of fakes. Meanwhile, in the US, local police departments reported scammers using cloned voices of relatives to trick people into handing over money. It wasn't just global anymore, it was personal. And here's the twist. Deepfakes didn't just make lies believable, they made the truth deniable. If anything could be fake, then everything could be dismissed. It's called the liar's dividend, where guilty people could wave away real evidence with 2 simple words. That's AI. Imagine footage of a war crime dismissed instantly, or a world leader caught confessing to corruption and then ignored, because who knows what's real anymore? The scarier part? Even after a deepfake is exposed, the damage lingers. Psychologists call it the continued influence effect. People remember the fake over the correction that is eventually made later on, because once the image is seen or the voice is heard, it can't be unseen or unheard. That was one of the major warnings in the echo chamber. Because now we're living in a post-truth era, not because lies are stronger, but because trust itself is dying. And once trust is gone, everything else collapses. But collapse doesn't just mean politics, bad laws, or broken elections. It actually means something far more intimate. Because the cost of echo chambers isn't theoretical, it's personal. Families split apart when parents and their kids live in different realities. Friendships break when 2 people can't even agree on basic facts. Communities tear themselves apart when neighbor turns against neighbor, each convinced the other is living in delusion. When reality itself becomes a weapon, the first casualty isn't democracy, it's trust. And without trust, society itself starts to break from the inside out. But here's where the documentary turns the camera around and why it was buried. It wasn't just about Cambridge Analytica. It wasn't just about Russia, COVID conspiracies, or deepfakes. It was about us. The documentary argued that platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Google, YouTube, and X weren't just victims of this information war. They were participants because outrage, division, and conspiracies all make money. With every click, every scroll, and every argument in the comments, it all adds up to more ad revenue, and the executives know it. The documentary shows leaked memos where Facebook's own researchers warned in 2018 that the algorithm was pushing divisive content, but nothing was done because fixing it would cost money. And according to the film, when they asked for interviews, most of the tech giants declined. The documentary presents itself as a documentary too dangerous to last, claiming that streaming platforms pulled out, distribution collapsed, and in some regions it never appeared at all. Because the documentary didn't just expose lies, it exposed something far darker. That reality itself could be crafted, manipulated, and weaponized. It wasn't about being asked to believe it. Instead, it asked you to look at receipts and the pivotal case studies where reality was hacked. And here's the twist. The documentary wasn't banned because it was false. It was buried because it was too true. And once you've seen it, you start questioning everything. Every headline, every viral post, every trending story. If you liked this video, subscribe for similar ones or leave a comment to suggest another.